individuals in your prayers. Welcome to our service, and I pray that the Lord will bless us all this morning with his message. So I'm going to hold on what our message is just yet and start with a story. Telling you that my experience is, for anyone who has flown, probably flown a little more than a couple times. This is not an uncommon experience, but this one is a little more dramatic than maybe most have had in flying. So I share this not to top anybody, certainly not Brother Jim, because Brother Jim can top every one of the stories I tell you this morning on flying, because he's had them all. But for a novice who's just sitting in seat 32B, I had an experience once or twice that was spectacular and horrible all at the same time. So a normal flight for me when I was working and traveling was to Montgomery, Alabama. Louisville to Montgomery was always a non-eventful flight until one morning. And I normally arrived at 8:35, if I remember right, Central Time. And so as we were landing, really it was a rough flight, probably from the border of Alabama all the way south. And that's probably represents 20 minutes of the flight. And we start to descend probably somewhere over Birmingham. And as we're coming down, it was really bad. We had stayed, we didn't climb very high in this particular flight from Louisville down. It wasn't necessary, but also decisions were made by the pilots for certain reasons. And as we started to descend into Montgomery, the plane really began to pitch. And as we got closer, the situation got worse inside the plane. But people began to get sick. I don't want to get too graphic, but to the point that they were utilizing the bags that you can get out of your seat in front of you. And I had never seen nor heard, and you're going to have to get creative in your mind, but it's not something you want to see nor hear on a plane, because for some people there are gag reactions and reflexes. And so I think that some inspired by the flight, some inspired by the sounds and sights of the airplane. But as we began to come down and that thing really began to shake and rattle, thankfully not roll, but as we started to come down on this flight, it really got bad. And then as we came into Montgomery, I mean, I have never, it is the single worst flight I'd ever had at that point in my life. And that plane, I mean, just went way back and forth, and very, very abruptly, all of a sudden, for most of us, and many heads were down, many people were really suffering already. That jet just took off straight, like we took off again. Now I've been coming down on a landing. I remember one in Miami where we almost touched down and the plane took off again. And I found out why. I'm not going to go through all those stories, but I've done that twice. Nothing like this. This was just, I mean, they came out of that descent so fast. Then he banked hard one way or the other. Don't have any recall to that. Feel like it was left, but I don't remember. He banked, and then we took off. Just left the area. And in leaving the area, they ascended up over the clouds. Now, where we were headed was Birmingham, Alabama. Where we were headed was to land in Birmingham, away from Montgomery, and then we were bussed all the way back to Montgomery. So it was at least a 3-hour delay from when we were going to land. All of that for safety, all of that for good purpose. But where I want to get to the purpose of this, I hope you were entertained by my story, but where I want to get to for the purpose of this was the ascent, not the descent. And as we came up out of Montgomery and came out of the clouds, something spectacular happened. Again, a common occurrence for many of you, and I certainly know for Brother Jim. And it's that this storm that we were in from the entire state of Alabama, from my recall, was beneath us. And it was choppy and terrible. Now, before I finish this thought, I want to tell you what happened. I almost always was the last person off a plane when we landed because I like to talk to the pilots, and it was my Jim Miller moment because he had told me so many flight stories. I used to love to interview them on the way out and sit and talk to them. Not always to their liking, I'm sure, like get off the plane, we're trying to rush to the next plane, but I love to talk to the pilots. Well, this one for sure. I stopped at the door and I said, "You got to tell me what just happened." And they looked around like, "We're going to tell you a secret." It was like, in that moment, I felt so important, like, "Oh, I'm getting inside scoop." So I said, "What happened?" And the left seat main pilot looked around and he said, "Well, we were talking to the tower," he said, "and we had heard that how bad this storm was, but they were identifying that it was tornadic weather beneath us." He said, and we had decided we're going down anyhow. We're not gonna veer away. He said, and then he said, I heard something in their voice that was urgent. And they said, pull up, pull up. And so they did. They just listened. I guess your train just listened to what they say. He said, we were landing by what they said, we were landing in a tornado. And I said, well, what would happen? He said, how can I tell you? He said, I don't know what would have happened. He said, I just know they said pull out. He said, but I'm sure we would have felt the pull into this thing. And I thought, wow, how spectacular is that? Okay, so that's the side story. I want you to know why we pulled up. That's just for the entertainment of everyone here. But the purpose of this message today is the ascent. And as we came out of those clouds, in spite of that storm, in spite of the danger, in spite of all that was beneath us that we experienced, the sun was still shining above the clouds. And it was glorious. Now I'll tell you another story. We flew out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, probably 3 years ago in a prop plane. And we should never have taken off. And I kept telling the pilot, we can stay for a couple hours, let this. He said, no, I think it's better to take off. Well, he was probably 25, which is, by the way, troubling for an old guy like me anyway. How's this young guy? At least tell me you shave. At least let me know that you shave, so that I know you have some maturity about you. So this young fella who probably tweezes his beard rather than shaves his beard is going to fly me through a storm. And so he says, no, we're going to take off. And the reason I bring his age up is he probably has fun waiting for him back in Louisville. He doesn't want to stay in Fort Wayne on some night that he probably has friends waiting for him. So he made this determination, in my mind, this is my story, so that he could go back and have his life in Louisville. So we took off. I mean, the takeoff was horrible. Little prop plane. That thing was just shaking. The ascent, terrible. I'm not going to do that sound every single time, but just know the entire flight from Fort Wayne, Indiana, in a prop plane, and I was, by the way, in the right seat. I was not in the back. I was up front in the right seat, where you don't want to sit if you don't know anything about flying, if you don't know anything about piloting, and you only know that there's black clouds around you and there's lightning cracking and there's the plane is shaking. Don't sit in the front right seat. That's where I sat. And all I kept thinking is, we can go back. You can go back to Fort Wayne at any point. And he never did. The plane was too small to climb any higher. And so he said, the safest thing is to stay close to the clouds, but we can't get above them. He said, I can't take the chance or the risk of going through these. By the way, I have expended my intellect as far as flying goes. I have no idea what he was saying and why he was saying. All I know is we were at this level, again, front right seat, we're at this level where the clouds were right there black. The wind was shaking us. A storm was coming. Lightning was cracking. I never saw the sun still shining. I never had that feeling that I'm above the storm. Two completely different experiences. In spite of what happened going into Montgomery, I felt safe in that flight from Montgomery to Birmingham just because I could see the sun shining. Follow me? Our message is the sun, S-O-N, is still shining. The message today is that down here on the ground, as one of my favorite musicians, George Benson used to sing. Down here on the ground, you may be in a storm. You may be in a mess in your life. You may be going through something that has your wings shaking. Even turning your stomach, you're feeling ill at ease. You're not feeling like you have anything to stand on substantial. The sun is still shining, and you have to trust that it's just a little above where you are. So in the first story I told you, it was provided to me. The reminder was provided to me. In the second story I told you, which came 10 years later, I had to remember that I had been above the clouds and that we're that close to being in a safe place because the sun is still shining. It's hard to understand. Today, we're probably 48 hours, maybe even 72 hours in cloud coverage everywhere here. Rain and fog and cloud coverage. But the sun is still shining. If we can just get to a level, and understand the metaphor here and the correlation here, we can just get to a level where we can find that sun shining, we could feel different. So sometimes it has to be within. We have to understand within and hold on in spite of what we're going through. That's our message today. And the only weather report that's necessary, because it's cloudy, it's rainy, it's foggy. The only weather report is another play on words. It's not W-E-A-T-H-E-R, it's W-H-E-T-H-E-R. And it's whether or not you believe this message today. That's the only thing that's going to change. So your report to God is whether or not you believe this. The sun is still shining. Don't let your eyes, don't let your situation, don't let your circumstance deceive you, because you can be deceived so easily. I'm going to read you a couple scriptures and then get to the crux of our message in the word. The first one is James 1. As you know, whenever I read something to you, I always say that's your homework assignment. So I asked you to read all of James 1 this week. And in the 12th verse, it says this, and I'm not going to read much. In the 12th verse, it says this. These are only tidbits and snacks or hors d'oeuvres before your main course. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation. Blessed is the woman who endureth temptation. For when she is tried, they shall receive the crown of life. It's important. This challenge that you're in is important. I listened to a conversation just the other day, and it was Ashton Kutcher, beautiful Ashton Kutcher. And I say that for a purpose. Beautiful Ashton Kutcher was a model. That was his first foray into the entertainment world, and deservedly so. Tall, handsome, good-looking man, and he's a twin. And I learned that later, but I don't recall that. But I do know that once I saw he and his brother on screen, I had learned that. What I didn't know is, and I think I'm saying it right, they're fraternal twins, which means they're not identical. And so Ashton Kutcher, this beautiful man, outshines, if you will, his twin. And I wonder what that's like to be this twin. And then the story went on to talk about that the twin has cerebral palsy, right? And this giving, loving brother, Ashton, poured his heart out to his brother and has tried to do anything he can to help him and shown him love and affection. And on this screen, the brother talked about the conversation he had to have with Ashton. And he said, "Your pity is taking me down. This is the only life I know. I don't know life in your experience. I don't know what it feels like to be Ashton Kutcher. I only know what it feels like to be me. And so your sympathy, your pity is taking me down. Let me get through this life. I can handle this. And when you pity me, you're also telling me you don't trust me." The sun is still shining, said the brother to Ashton. Don't assume that I'm caught up in this cloud coverage. I see my circumstance. I'm making the best of it. We can't change our situations all the time. Sometimes we can. We can't always change our situations. We can't always change our circumstance, but we can change the way we view them. Because I had been above the clouds in Montgomery, I got above the clouds mentally in Fort Wayne, right? So I was in another storm, in another, probably a worse situation, at least by my assessment, in this little plane than the first one. But I found comfort knowing I'm just below where the sun is still shining. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation. Blessed is the man that endureth the storm. For when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Father or the Lord hath promised to him to them that love him. Let no man say when he's tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil. Neither tempts he any man. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away. Listen to this. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. When we focus on the storm, when we focus on the situation, and we give in to fear and concern and oh, woe is me. Hear this, that's when we really hit bottom. Do not err, my beloved brethren. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, where the sun shines and comes down from the Father of lights. Sun shines. James 1, that's your homework. We all know the verses I spew joyfully, but I don't know that they're received joyfully when they come so often. But one of them is Romans 8:28. You've heard it again and again and again. All things work for the good of those who love and serve the Lord. I'm not going to do the quote. All things. It's all with purpose. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation. You're in the storm. This can be used for the benefit. Ashton's brother said, pity me. Don't take me down. For I have learned, and it's one of my favorite verses, for I have learned. It's so critical you understand the word as it is. I have learned that whatsoever state, stormy or sunny, whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. This is where the Lord has placed me. I don't necessarily agree with it. This is not what I would have chosen. Trust me when I tell you, in that little prop plane, that is not what I would have chosen. I could stay at Fort Wayne, had another Sprite, just sat in that little tiny little airport. I would have been the happiest guy in the world to watch the lightning crack around us. It's not my choice, but I can remember. Trust me when I tell you this, it wasn't immediate. It took me about 20 minutes to get there, but I can remember saying, okay, this is the situation we're in. Nothing's going to change. I see the black clouds all the way down. We're probably going to have them all the way to Louisville. I found my place. I told you before, one of my comforts was the sun is just above us. We're going to get now to the point of our message today. I have a favorite chapter, and I have a favorite story, and it's always a Christmas story, and I had forgotten where we were. I've forgotten everything about it. I even forgot what's used in this story, and so I immediately went to, I know a great comeback story when you're in the storm and you get through it. And then when I read it, it was like, oh Lord, I think you've laid this one up for us. So I hope and pray that this is the Lord's message and not my own. It's 3rd Nephi, the first chapter. But before we get to it, I want to, I don't know that I necessarily want to recommend, but I'm going to tell you what I've been watching. I've been watching a TV show, a documentary called Ancient Apocalypse. And it's eight different episodes. And the storyline is that he's not an archaeologist, he's a reporter. And he shakes the world of archaeology all the time because he's not an archaeologist. And he challenges the findings and the conclusions to findings. And so he sees it, he puts a different spin on it. So already he's won my heart. That seems to be what my world is defined by. I see the same thing everyone else sees. I see it differently and throw wrenches into the workings all the time. But that's my commercial on ancient apocalypse. What I wanted to tell you is he did something in probably episode 3 that was like, yes. And he's down in Mexico, and he's by the way, for those of you, if you're not interested yet, I'll get you interested. In Mexico, there exists the largest pyramid on the earth. Most of us would have traveled to Egypt to see the largest pyramids. Not there. It's in Mexico, and it's covered up. Most of it underground. Okay. When he talked about that, he talked about, I've always called him Quetzalcoatl, and I'm saying it wrong, and I can't say it right, just so you know, because he pronounces it, and the locals pronounce it. But Quetzalcoatl was the like the feathered serpent. And if you listen or read, at least for me, He Walked the Americas is where I uncovered this story. If you read the story, they're identifying a white bearded man, a lighter bearded man who came to the Americas and told them things from the other side of the ocean. And when I read that, I was like, yes, this is incredible. This is phenomenal. This is what Jesus Christ became to them. Sorry, Lord, that they made you a snake-like feathered creature, whatever it is. But the representation was this man who appeared from the sky and ascended to them, descended to them, and then ascended after he visited. Okay. Now, I've always told people I believe he did that just like he did in Jerusalem, just like we believe he did in America from our record. I believe he did that multiple times over the next year after his resurrection. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he have gone to Indonesia? Why wouldn't, this is my argument. Why wouldn't he have gone and visited all these other places? Ancient apocalypse, the man says that there are like stories. Again, I'm saying it wrong, but to Quetzalcoatl, who went to multiple places. He went to Malta, he went to all other places, and he drew the correlation again. Okay, so all of that just to tell you that I believe this story I'm going to read to you was repeated multiple times in multiple parts of the world. But we have this beautiful record that records this story. So this is just one. I think when other records come forward, we're going to learn them all. All of that just to say, let me read to you 3 Nephi, the first chapter. So in this story, the books prior to, or the chapters prior to this 3 Nephi, there was a man named Samuel the Lamanite. Samuel the Lamanite stood upon a wall and prophesied about a day, a night, and a day that would all be lit. Okay, it would never darken. And when this happens, he said, that'll be the sign that the Lord has arrived on the earth. And there was a band of people who believed, and there was a larger band of people who didn't believe. And this story became a pivot point in that time period for these people. Them versus us. And so it was, I love this story for so many reasons. And so it was that there was excitement in those who believed, waiting for this to come true. And then I believe it probably waned. Did we get our date right? Was it today? Was it tomorrow? When is this day coming? Where's Samuel the Lamanite when you need him? He had run off into the woods. If you read the story, they were seeking his life and he escaped. Never to be seen again, by the way. So the source of this message is gone. We can't even check our watches. We can't even sync up. Now he's gone. Now no one knows which exact day it is, but we think it's this Wednesday. I'm making these part of my story up. I think you know. We think it's this Wednesday. We think this is the day, the night, and the day that's going to be like, it's coming. But it could have been last Wednesday. I don't know if I have. And so the unbelievers rose up. and began to challenge the believers. The storm was brewing. And did I mention what would happen if this sign didn't come to be? Now I remember, they would all be put to death. The people of God would be put to death for the crime of believing the prophecy. And so it was that Nephi was the leader of these people, and he was the spokesman, and he's the one who took responsibility for them. And as the temptation was getting greater, the storm was cracking louder, the darkness was there for days. It was hard for them to understand that the sun was still shining. Maybe that's where you are in your life. I don't know. But that's where they were. And their end result of this storm was impending death for all that they loved. Not just me and Nephi, but all that I love. All that have unified with me. All that are in sync with my belief system. All of us will be put to death. So concerning the unbelievers in verse 6, they began to rejoice over their brethren, saying, behold, the time is past, the words of Samuel are not fulfilled. So your joy and your faith concerning this thing have been in vain. They rejoiced in the fact that it wasn't coming true. Misery certainly loves company. They were creating this disruption. They were creating the storm. And they rejoiced in bringing misery to the people of God. So I believe, again, all of this is my filling. I believe they were jealous long before this moment. Who are this band of joyful people who are focused and celebrating that which isn't? It's just mist. They believe in fluff. They believe in make-believe. But they're happy with that. Must have caused jealousy. And this envy is now turned to an angry happiness. Because we got you. This Wednesday, you're ours. Verse 7, it came to pass that they did make a great uproar throughout the land. And the people who believed, watch this, began to be very sorrowful. It worked. They got them focused on the storm. They forgot the sun is still shining. They got them focused on the storm. They brought them down. That's the purpose of the storm. Remember, temptation doesn't come from God. Remember, we read that. So the source of the storm wants you to be miserable. These were his players. The non-believers were the storm makers' players. And they were bringing misery to these people. I'm asking you, whatever you're in, whatever situation is, understand the sun is still shining. Don't lose faith and hope in that. Now it came to pass that there was a day set apart by the unbelievers, and all those who believed, I've named this as Wednesday, so you understand what they're talking about, in those traditions should be put to death, except the sign should come to pass, which was given by Samuel. This is the day. This is date due. That light doesn't stay lit Wednesday night, you're out. We've got a plan. In fact, we're building the gallows as we speak, and we're taking joy. Whistle while you work. They're pounding these gallows. They're so happy to think we're putting them all to death. We're getting these joy makers out of our way so that the land can be miserable again. That's who's working against them. Now, when Nephi, the son of Nephi, saw this wickedness of his people, his heart was exceeding sorrowful. It came to pass that he went out and bowed himself on the earth and cried mightily to his God in behalf of his people. Yea, those were about to be destroyed. Listen how this is the perspective is. Those who are about to be destroyed is who he's praying for. It is date certain, event certain. That if this prophecy not just doesn't happen, because if it happens on Thursday, it's too late. It has to happen on Wednesday. So he is already assuming they are going to be destroyed if we don't move the hand of God. And bowed down on the earth and cried mightily to the Lord on behalf of his people, yea, those who are about to be destroyed because of their faith in the tradition of their fathers. It came to pass that he cried mightily unto the Lord all that day, and behold, the voice of the Lord came to him. So I sound excited about this already. We're not even to the best part of this story. I want you to hear what is said, and then I want you to consider who is saying this and from whence they're saying this. It's my favorite part of the story. Join me, scene change. We go back to Jerusalem and we see Mary rubbing her belly. Oh, Joseph, if he doesn't come soon, Joseph, by the way, I've been Joseph before. If he doesn't come soon, Joseph, I don't know what we're going to do. This is happening right now while he's praying. She's probably rubbing her belly. She's in pain. And here's what Nephi hears. Behold, the voice of the Lord came unto him saying, verse 13, lift up your head. Think of the symbolism there. Lift up your head. The sun is still shining. Lift up your head. And I never read it that way before this tie-in today. Lift up your head. Be of good cheer. For behold, the time is at hand. On this night, he answered him Wednesday, concerning the night. On this night shall the sign be given, and on the morrow come I into the world. Where is this voice coming from? Where is the source of this voice? What's it called when they take the thing can with the on the belly? Ultrasound. I'm picturing the ultrasound with Jesus with a little microphone. On this night, come I into the world. This is Jesus speaking. I think from the womb. Spectacular, spectacular. To show unto the world that I will fulfill all which I have caused to be spoken, which I have caused to be spoken by the mouth of the holy prophets. The rescue is complete. The storm is quelled. Those who kept their faith through the storm will know that the storm ends just moments from now. Tear those gallows down. They're unnecessary. The Lord has rescued his people. I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're in a storm. I don't know if there's a storm coming or if you're still in the storm, but hear me. The sun is still shining. You may not see it. You have to believe it. They couldn't see the sun that was, or the light that was going to burst in the sky. A new star appeared in Jerusalem. It burst in the sky in the Americas and stayed light all night. That light will shine again. You just wait. Trust. Believe. The bad does not come from him. It's not sourced in him. The rescue is. He overcomes that. Trust him. Ashton's brother said, shh, I don't need that voice right now. Let me believe. Let me get through this. The Lord entrusted you with your life. He entrusted you with your storm. He entrusted you with your personal walk. And mine and yours are different. So I have no right to say what I'm saying now, but I'm saying it anyway. The sun is still shining. Not because I say so. Because he said, lift up your head. Be of good cheer. Search through the clouds. Find that light. The sun is still shining. May the Lord bless you.